More than 100 people vanished without a trace. No bodies, no signs of violence, just a single word carved into a tree. More than 400 years later, nobody knows exactly what happened. This is the Lost Colony of Roanoke, and the real story does not start with the mystery. It starts with the man who was forced to leave them all behind. In the summer of 1587, more than 100 English men, women, and children stepped onto the sandy shores of Roanoke Island, determined to build a new life on the edge of the known world. They arrived under the command of Governor John White, an artist and observer with a keen eye for detail and a deep sense of duty to those he led. This was not a band of adventurers chasing fortune, but families, mothers and fathers, carpenters and farmers, all hoping to plant roots where none had grown before. Among them was White's own daughter Eleanor, who soon gave birth to Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the Americas. Her cries echoed the colony's hope for a future on this unfamiliar coast. The settlement they began was more than a distant outpost. It was meant to be a permanent English foothold, a new beginning for those willing to risk everything. They built wooden houses behind a palisade, tilled the thin soil, and learned to watch the tides and the shifting winds. John White's journals capture the daily struggles and small triumphs of the group, as well as the fragile optimism that held them together. Every decision carried weight. These colonists were not just names on a passenger list. They were a living community with dreams, fears, and a desperate need for stability in a land that offered no guarantees. John White's promise to secure fresh supplies was more than a hopeful gesture. It was the colony's lifeline. As he boarded a ship bound for England, he left behind not only his daughter and newborn granddaughter, but every man, woman, and child who depended on his swift return. The settlement stores were already running low, and the thin coastal soil yielded little. White expected to be gone just a few months, enough time to gather food, tools, and new settlers. But with his departure, the fragile outpost stood exposed, its fate tied to distant winds and decisions across the sea. No one could predict how long the colonists could endure without help, or what dangers might close in as they waited. Each day stretched the thread of hope thinner, leaving the community vulnerable and alone on the edge of the unknown. John White reached England expecting a quick turnaround, just long enough to load ships with food, tools, and fresh settlers. Instead, he found the country on the brink of war. In 1588, the Spanish Armada loomed off the coast, and every seaworthy vessel was claimed for defense. White pleaded for passage, but the Queen's orders left no room for private missions. Even when a ship could be found, French pirates prowled the channel, seizing supplies and making the Atlantic crossing a gamble with little hope of success. Months slipped into years. Letters went unanswered. The fate of more than 100 men, women, and children hung in the balance, unseen and unheard across a vast ocean. While White waited, the colony's lifeline frayed. No word could reach Roanoke. No relief could break through the blockade. The silence grew heavier with each passing season, turning absence into dread. By the time White finally secured passage in 1590, the world he'd left behind had become a ghost story waiting for its final page. John White stepped ashore on Roanoke Island in August 1590, 3 years to the day after his granddaughter's birth. The world he had left behind had vanished. The wooden houses were empty, the palisade stood silent, and not a single colonist could be found. There were no graves, no scattered belongings, no broken weapons. Only the wind moving through abandoned earthworks. White searched for any sign of violence or disaster, but the ground yielded nothing. No charred timbers, no blood stains, no hurried footprints. It was as if the settlement had simply dissolved into the forest. The emptiness pressed in, raising questions that no one could answer. Somewhere, there had to be a message, a trace of what happened here, left behind for those who might one day return. A single word carved into wood became the heart of the Roanoke mystery. Near the empty palisade, John White found CROATOAN cut cleanly into a post, the letters bold and unmistakable. Not far away, the partial carving CRO appeared on a tree, as if someone had started a message and never finished. These were not random marks left by weather or animals. White recognized them at once as deliberate, recalling the agreement made before his departure. If the colonists were forced to leave under threat, they would add a Maltese cross to their message. No such cross was found. Instead, the carving suggested intention, a signal left for White, pointing to a place, not a disaster. CROATOAN was the name of a nearby island home to allies and familiar faces. Did the colonists relocate by choice, or was something else hidden in those letters? The word itself became the only clue, a riddle etched in wood, inviting questions that have never faded. Four main theories compete to explain the fate of the Roanoke colonists, each built on fragments of evidence and marked by unanswered questions. The first centers on the word CROATOAN, carved at the deserted site. Some interpret this as a sign that the settlers joined the CROATOAN people on Hatteras Island. John White, the colony's governor, believed this was a planned move. Archaeological finds of English pottery, iron tools, and glass beads have surfaced on Hatteras, dating to the years after the colony's disappearance. Oral histories among the CROATOAN and Lumbee describe pale newcomers who settled and intermarried. Yet no English-style settlement has been found, and the artifacts might reflect trade rather than migration. The theory remains plausible, but incomplete. Another hypothesis points to violence. Roanoke was surrounded by shifting alliances and hostilities. Rumors of massacre circulated later, and tension with neighboring tribes is well documented. Still, White found no bodies, no ruins, and no Maltese cross signaling distress. The absence of physical evidence undermines the case for a sudden attack, though it cannot be ruled out. A third theory looks to environmental disaster. Drought in the late 1580s, confirmed by tree rings and sediment, could have led to crop failure, hunger, and disease. An isolated colony cut off from England would have been vulnerable. However, the site shows no mass graves or clear signs of epidemic. The record suggests hardship, not a single catastrophic event. The final theory suggests inland relocation. The partial CRO carving may hint at a move up the rivers. English artifacts from the 1590s have been found along the Roanoke and Chowan, mixed with indigenous goods. Yet no direct trail links these finds to the colonists, and the documentary record is silent on a mass migration. Each theory fits part of the evidence, but none offers a complete answer. The search for answers has shifted from old maps and faded journals to the muddy soil of Hatteras Island. Archaeologists have spent decades sifting through layers of earth, uncovering fragments that whisper of English hands, pottery shards, iron tools, glass beads, all dating to the late 1500s. These finds match the era of Roanoke's disappearance, and some researchers argue they hint at the colonists' presence among the CROATOAN people. Yet every artifact raises as many questions as it answers. Skeptics point out that trade networks could have carried English goods far from their original owners, and that layers of soil can mix over centuries, blurring the true story. Inland teams have found European metalwork and pottery along the Roanoke and Chowan rivers, but these too are tangled with indigenous items, leaving their origins disputed. Modern technology, ground-penetrating radar and LiDAR scans, has revealed hidden earthworks and possible settlement sites, but no definitive proof of who lived or died there. Each discovery is a clue, not a verdict, and the line between evidence and speculation remains razor thin. The mystery endures, shaped as much by what we cannot prove as by what we find beneath the sand. Most historians today resist claiming a single answer to the fate of Roanoke. The prevailing view is that the truth likely involves a mix of relocation, integration with local tribes, hardship, and perhaps conflict, rather than one clean solution. The evidence remains incomplete, with every new discovery raising as many questions as it answers. For now, the case is still open, and the mystery continues to challenge both scholars and seekers alike. Centuries on, Roanoke's silence endures. No graves, only a single carved word. As new archaeological traces emerge and debates sharpen, the shadows refuse to lift. The fate of the colonists remains unsolved, A reminder that history's greatest secrets sometimes linger just beyond our reach. What's your theory?